Louisa Wall.
Tēnā koe, Mr Chair. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to part 2 of the Point England Development Enabling Bill. And I specifically want to talk to my Supplementary Order Paper 320. And I want to read out what the Supplementary Order Paper is seeking to do. So in Clause 7, after Subclause 4, page 4, after line 2, insert 5. Section 136 of the Ngā Mana Whenua o Tamaki Makaurau Collective Redress Act 2014 does not apply if notice under Section 120 of that Act is not given in respect of the development land following the registration of the memorial under subsection 3C. Now, the relevance of this particular supplementary order paper actually rests on what does Section 136 of the Settlement Act say. And what it does is provide that rights of first refusal land can be disposed of where it is held for state housing purposes, and the Minister considers the disposal is to achieve or assist in achieving the Crown's social objectives in relation to housing, which is exactly what this bill is going to do, is to provide this land for social housing. So we've heard that this bill is all about Ngāti Paoa's treaty settlement, and I want to acknowledge Hauru Rawiri, who's here representing Ngāti Paoa. We've seen letters, well, I've seen letters from the Minister of Treaty Negotiations dated the 13th of October 2016 state that, but nowhere in this legislation is that recorded, because before that can happen, actually, this legislation needs to pass. Now, the relevance of this SOP needs to be looked at within the context of the 9.5 hectares, the Moya Road Massey development, which was Ministry of Education land. Because, in fact, the justification for that land not being right of first refusal land was essentially that it was to become, as I've quoted above, used for state housing purposes. And so the intention was to sell it as residential mixed housing urban to Fletchers. And when Ngāti Whātua heard about that, they, along with Waikato Tainui, decided to take the Crown to court. And what resulted from that has been incredibly interesting, because a couple of weeks ago, actually Ngāti Whātua went to the Court of Appeal, because originally they went to the High Court and they decided that they weren't going to hear the case. And so the case in the Court of Appeal is really about clarifying from Ngāti Whātua's perspective overlapping iwi boundary issues. Now, those issues are really relevant if you look at lands that the Crown has in Tamaki Makaurau and then what it chooses to do with those lands. Because under that 2014 Collective Settlement Redress Act, the mana whenua of Tamaki Makaurau actually do have rights of first refusal over all lands except those that are designated for social housing purposes. Now, I'm not sure what the Court of Appeal is going to find, because presumably, because the Crown is using this piece of land as treaty settlement, what the court is going to say that this House and ultimately Parliament has jurisdiction. The court doesn't have jurisdiction, but the House does. And so we've struggled all along with this piece of legislation because from Ngāti Paoa's perspective, this is a treaty settlement legislation. But when you look at the regulatory impact statement prepared by the Ministry of Business, Innovation and Employment, they were really clear that this proposed legislation remains outside treaty settlement policy. And therein lies all the conflicts between what the Crown has said to justify this piece of legislation. And in fact, in justifying this as treaty settlement legislation, as I pointed out before, they've managed to circumvent what would have been an Auckland Council process of consulting with the people of Point England. Because who was consulted? Actually, from the information that I've gathered, it was Auckland Council under Mayor Brown, who's no longer the Mayor, Mr Chair. Mr Chair, it was the previous chair of the Maungakeke Tamaki Local Board. It was the Tamaki Redevelopment Company, but because this was going to be used for a treaty settlement, the council didn't want to breach confidentiality and actually chose not to do what they should have done, which was to engage and consult with the community. So we're here totally by design and totally by design of the government. And so we do have a problem with the process. We don't have a problem with Ngāti Pawa at all. Ngāti Pawa, actually, I do believe, in 2015 came up with this idea themselves because they knew that the government had identified 500 hectares of land, actually, across Tāmaki Makaurau. And they saw what happened at the Moya development in Massey, which, by the way, is now a joint venture between Fletchers and Ngāti Whātua Whairawa Limited. So Ngāti Pawa said, there's an opportunity for us here, and we're going to take it. And the Crown has decided that they will use this land for the Ngāti Pawa treaty settlement. But that's why I believe my supplementary order paper is vital. Because what this will mean is only Ngāti Pawa can get this piece of whenua as part of their commercial redress for their treaty settlement. Without this, the Minister for Housing can do what they did in the Moya Road development and actually put it out for tender and give it to somebody else, a third party. Fletchers, I know there's 3 preferred providers, but Fletchers was the one that's been mentioned by the local community. Because this bill now is about some form of reconciliation. Do I think treaty settlements have a special place in the Parliament and in the history of our country? I do, actually. It is part of our truth and reconciliation process. But the manner in which this bill has been progressed through the House has actually hugely compromised that process because of what the Crown has done deliberately and not ensuring that you've taken the public with you. I am very supportive of treaty settlements that will enable our mana whenua to create a capital base for ourselves to be independent. And I know that the housing that Ngāti Pawa will build on that property actually is going to house some of the whānau and state houses that are part of the Tāmaki development. So they are interlinked. There is a relationship between the housing development that Ngāti Pawa will lead and the Tāmaki development because Tāmaki need to move people from state houses into this development to then develop those lands. And that's a 7,500 house development. 2,500 of those houses are state houses. So the only positive from my perspective is that the people who are living in those state houses are going to have an opportunity to actually remain in the community that they've called home. So if there was one positive that I want to highlight, it's actually that. But other than that, I know that for a lot of people who live in that community, this has been incredibly stressful and distressing. We've put everything on Ngāti Pawa to try and address the lack of process through this bill. We've asked them to go and talk to the community. And actually, when we had the Minister of Treaty Negotiations before the Māori Affairs Select Committee a couple of weeks ago, I asked him, what's your responsibility? What's the responsibility of the Office of Treaty Settlements actually to do some of the work that Ngāti Pawa's had to do? Because they're not the ones that people should be angry with. The only people to be angry with in this process is Nick Smith, is the National Government, is the National Caucus and their coalition partners who have allowed this situation to occur. So I implore my colleagues across the House, I know New Zealand First has said they won't support it, but I'm hoping the government will. It's a sign of goodwill. I think it would also allay some of the fears that the community have, that this could be developed by somebody else, because I do think that they will enjoy working with Ngāti Pawa who will build a marae, who will continue to have a relationship with that community beyond the development of these houses. Kia ora.
I'm calling Barry Coates.
Thank you, Mr Chair. I rise to address Part 2, Clause 6